First off, this is a story you're only going to get here on Johnny Digs Cincy. I'm Johnny Westside, and today I'm pulling the roots on a 130-year-old cover-up that proves Cincinnati's judicial system has always known how to protect its own. We're tracing the bloodline of a crime that started all the way in Ireland as a deathbed promise and ended with a 5-shot execution right here on a Cincinnati sidewalk. While the man who hunted her down was forgiven by the Pope and restored to the pulpit, all because the judicial system traded the truth for a 19-month stall, moving this man around from prisoner to patient. I think it's time we put some respect on the name the city of Cincinnati tried to erase. Molly Gilmore. Now, in order to understand the blood on a Cincinnati sidewalk, we have to first look at the dirt of County Sligo, Ireland, 1888. Molly was just a teenager when her world was falling apart. See, her mom was dying, and on her deathbed, she did what any good mother would do. She found her daughter a protector, and she thought she found one in local curate Father Dominic O'Grady. He was 35 years old, 20 years older than her. He didn't look over Molly as if she was a ward. He looked over at her as if she was prey. If you think a vow to a dying mother is sacred, like and follow, because what this priest does next is going to make your blood boil. For 5 years, he wore a collar and stood at the altar. He was pouring love into the ears of a girl that started out as a child and later ended up as a victim. He didn't just steal her innocence. No. He waited for her father to die, and then he stole her future, convincing her to give him $1,000 her dad had left her as a ticket to a new life. But that $1,000 today would be like 35 large. But we have to talk about the stop in Chicago that history books want you to forget. Because she stopped in Chicago to visit her brother, a priest himself, the only person she thought that could protect her from another priest. And when she got to Chicago, her brother took her straight up to the chain and went to the head bishop in charge and told him about the $1,000 and told him about all these weird letters he'd been writing her, and actually told him that he was in Chicago and showed up to her brother's apartment and was expressing these predatory behaviors that had been developing in Ireland for the last 5 years. What did the church officials do? You think they called the police? No. They told her to pack her bags, move to Cincinnati, and hide. And they treated O'Grady like he was a clerical error instead of like a loaded gun he was. See, so Molly just didn't leave Ireland. She fled. She crossed the Atlantic trying to shake a shadow that had been looming over her since she was 15. But O'Grady, he wasn't going to let his investment walk away, no. He was going to use her inheritance money to track her through New York, Philly, and Chicago. Think about that. A 41-year-old man stalking a 21-year-old girl across a continent. When she arrived in Cincinnati, she thought she'd be safe with her family here on Chestnut. She even took a job at Pulvermacher's Galvanic Belt Company to try to start a clean slate. But O'Grady, he was already in the city, lurking, in the shadows with a vial of poison and a loaded revolver, because he didn't come to Cincinnati to have no conversation. He came to Cincinnati because if he couldn't own her life, he was going to end it. See, but we have to get this timeline straight, because the truth is more terrifying than the myth they sold you in the newspapers. This wasn't a dark alley at midnight. This was broad day, in the hours between 1 and 2. He did it in front of children, and then according to the Commercial Gazette, he was seen days in advance hovering around this cemetery, waiting for that exact moment, to where he ran up on her, fired 5 shots as he grabbed her by the arm. And what the children heard, it wasn't what they heard, it's what they saw. What they saw, a man who was supposed to be representing God, standing over a 21-year-old girl they just pumped lead into. While the city was clamoring for justice and the neighbors were giving their testimony to anybody who would listen, the artful machine in Cincinnati was building a cage of red tape, because they didn't want a trial. They wanted a stall. For 19 months, a system sat on its hands while O'Grady lived a life of leisure in a hospital, while reports had came out that he had been fed a diet of bananas and beer to keep his delicate nerves calm. What? I mean, I can't, and this is my own writing, people, and it still blows my mind. By 1895, the fix was in, and Dr. Bramble had decided to move him to Longview Asylum up off Paddock Road. But the asylum is only a prison if the guards want you there. O'Grady escaped, and he walked away for good in 1898. But he didn't just escape the building, he escaped justice. While he was later reassigned and forgiven by the Pope, the city of Cincinnati and the system was trying to wipe away Molly's memory underneath an unmarked grave. Here's the deal. The system failed her, but the community, it did not. When it came time to bury Molly, the people of the West End rose all the way up, and they formed a procession that stretched through the streets of Cincinnati. A chain of dignity for the woman that the courts and the church tried to abandon. They marched her all the way up this big hill to Mount St. Joe Cemetery. And on that day in 1894, they gave her something more powerful than a monument. They gave her their witness. They said, hey, I saw what happened. I know the truth. But you have to ask yourself, how does a rogue priest execute another priest's sister in broad daylight and walk away clean in just 4 years? Well, it's easy if you look at the top of the food chain. And at the top, William McKinley wasn't just running the state. He was preparing his run for the White House. And the last thing he needed was the hanging of a priest right before his election. So what was the problem? Well, the problem was brutal murder. The reaction? Well, the community wanted blood. And the solution? Well, it was a clever solution. The McKinley solution. A 3-term of court stall and a strategic move from prisoner to patient. Is this conspiracy? Or is it just how the game's played? Because we see the same cycle in 2026. Problem, reaction, solution. And O'Grady got his escape and his collar back. McKinley got his presidency. And Molly, she got a community to carry her casket because the governor couldn't carry the truth. Can it get any deeper than that? I don't know. We'll find out next time on Johnny Digs Cincy. I'm Johnny Westside. Peace.